name is Reverend Kate Wilkinson, and I am so glad that you have joined us for Easter Sunday. This feels like a good time to remind you that we are here every week, and you are always welcome. I especially want to welcome all of the children who are here today. I'm so happy to see all your faces. And I invite you to join us in an Easter egg hunt after the service. We have Easter bags for you to decorate downstairs during coffee hour, and then we'll all head outside at 12:30 for some Easter egg finding. So much fun. And our opening words are by Andrew Pakula. Come into this circle of community. Come into this sacred space. Be not tentative. Bring your whole self. Bring the joy that makes your heart sing. Bring your kindness and your compassion. Bring also your sorrow, your pain. Bring your brokenness and your disappointments. Spirit of love and mystery, help us to recognize the spark of the divine that resides within each of us. May we know the joy of wholeness. May we know the joy of being together. This morning's story for all ages is called Spring Surprise, and it's an interactive story for Easter. Try it. Here's a story by Kirsty Johnson. It wasn't a particularly hard winter that year, but it was long and dreary and colorless. No wonder then that when the first winds of April blew warm breath across the land and the land began to green, the wild creatures on 4 feet and on the wing took notice. The first creature, a small mouse, sat back on her haunches and smelled the warm air. She knew what this meant. The green time was coming, and the first small shoots of grass. Okay, grass, you are, ooh. Okay. The green time was coming, and the first small shoots of grass, which tasted so very good, would begin to show themselves. Ah, sighed the mouse. Tender grass to nibble on and to line my nest for my babies. The mouse was not the only creature glad to smell spring in the air. The fuzzy-tailed squirrel scampered to and fro, up and down the trees. He paused a moment to watch a sparrow and her mate work on their nest. Mrs. Sparrow wanted to line the nest with soft lint and grass in a particular way. Mr. Sparrow was getting tired of her bossing, and soon he flew off and hid behind a daffodil, which was nodding in the breeze. Fuzzy-tailed squirrel shook his tail and scampered off. He remembered a spot where he had hidden a particularly juicy horse chestnut. He hoped that the little mouse had not found it. High overhead, Nighthawk surveyed the land. His favorite tree was still there, and his neighbor, Fuzzy-tailed Squirrel, was there too. He passed his winters far to the south, but he was always glad to return to his home. The trees were all fuzzy and green with baby leaves, and the flowering trees were bright with colored petals. And over there were the daffodils, waving and nodding to him. The warm spring sun shone down upon the land, upon the grass that glowed with green vigor, upon the little mouse, as she put the finishing touches on her nest, and upon the daffodils too. The sun gave warmth to the wings of the nighthawk as he soared upon the wind and beamed upon the sparrow family as they worked a bit more cooperatively this time, on their nest. The sun gleamed at the fuzzy-tailed squirrel as he scampered about. It even glittered upon the pond far below. Down in the deep quiet of the pond, where the water never quite froze, even in the deep midwinter, the warmth of the sun began to heat the water until suddenly the frogs popped out of their winter mud nests. Tadpoles began to swim in the sun-warmed pond, and they dreamed of jumping high into the air to see the grass at the edge of their world. The peepers joined the chorus, and the pond added music to the colors of spring. And there in the musical, colorful world where the grass was green and the daffodils nodded in the breeze, where the tadpoles dreamed and swam in the warm waters of the pond, and where the fuzzy-tailed squirrels scampered in the tree as the nighthawk settled into his tree, while the sun shone on down, the little brown mouse had her babies. The sparrow laid 4 eggs, and what had been the promise of spring became the fulfillment of it. Good job. You're good sports. We don't have our spoken candles of joy and concern this morning, but if you have something on your heart, I invite you to light a candle to the right of the table at any time during the service, and there is a journal there to record your thoughts and prayers. Now would you join me in the spirit of prayer and meditation? After our spoken prayer and a time of silence, we will sing together Spirit of Life, which you can find in your order of service. Spirit of life, be with us this morning with all that we carry, joys and sorrows, hopes and doubts, accomplishments and failures. Be with us as we open our hearts to the joy of Easter and to the hope that this season brings. Spirit of new life, help us to welcome spring into our lives. Help us to welcome new beginnings, risks, and the unknown. Spirit of compassion, help us to be gentle with each other and with ourselves. Help us to forgive and to love more deeply. Spirit of memory, be with us as we hold dearly thoughts of those who are no longer with us. Help us to heal from our many losses and to balance remembering with letting go. Spirit of resurrection, be with us as we roll back the stones of fear, hatred, and indifference to welcome a world of peace. Help us to work for tolerance, justice, and solidarity. Spirit of community, be with us this Easter morning as we worship together in honor of stories of rebirth and in celebration of renewed life. Amen. Our reading this morning is by Ellen Cooper. No Alleluias until Easter, my daughter told me solemnly. Shh, the Alleluias are sleeping. She pointed to the small raised bed garden being warmed by the spring sun, where I could see the sprouts of trumpet lilies pushing up through the soft dirt. Before Easter, she summed up, no Alleluias. After Easter, Alleluias again. Of course, perhaps the simplest, most elegant explanation of Easter I have ever heard, without all the complicated and problematic substitutionary atonement theology, without the difficulty of missing bodies or visitations from the dead. This is Easter, stripped down to its most central, heart of hearts message. We have Alleluias in our lives, moments of triumph and wonder, of insight and rebirth. These are moments of transformation, when our way of being in the world is fundamentally changed, strengthened, deepened, when we feel more whole, more connected. The exuberant and joyful Alleluia is a good way to think of these moments. But as my Christian colleagues are fond of saying, you can't get to Easter without Good Friday. I remember taking part in the same interactive story that we had fun with this morning about 10 years ago at the church I was attending in Boston. I was a daffodil. I loved the silliness of it and the chorus of the natural world created by the congregation around me. I looked around and saw children and adults and grandparents all creating church together. People taking risks and laughing together, celebrating. It was awfully fun to do it again this morning with all of you. It was just as fun as I remembered. A funny thing happened, though, about 8 years ago. I was talking to a friend of mine from seminary. She is a Presbyterian minister. She was talking about a friend of hers who was looking for a church to attend. She described what her friend was looking for in a community, and it sounded an awful lot like the church I had been attending. So I suggested that my friend recommend it to her friend. "Oh, she won't go back there," my friend told me. "She tried it once, on Easter. They made her chirp like a bird." Well, you can't please everyone. And that is not our goal, really. But we do think deeply about what different people will connect with here at the Meeting House, what will feed our spirits, what will awaken our compassion, what will engage us with the work of justice making, what will comfort us, and what will challenge us, what we will keep from the stories we grew up hearing, and what we will let go of. Unitarian Universalists wrestle mightily with how to celebrate Easter. We want to celebrate the pagan elements, rebirth symbolized by bunnies and eggs, the blooming flowers, the resurrection of earth after a long winter. But we don't know exactly what to do with that other resurrection, the central story of Jesus' death, his burial, and then the empty tomb. Christopher Walton once said, "There are many who wish that Christianity could shed the terrible tragedy of its central story, that it could tell a story of buoyant optimism, could promise a painless life." Many Unitarian Universalists believe that Easter is the celebration of the natural recurrence of spring, that the message of this week is simply natural renewal, as if our religion offers what CVS Pharmacy promised a few years ago on the posters in its windows: "CVS, we make Easter easy." But the truth is, Easter is not easy. The truth is, the good news of Christianity doesn't come without the death. You can't get to Easter without Good Friday. And regardless of our religious beliefs, we can probably all attest that in our lives too, the good news comes mixed in with the bad. The celebrations come mixed in with the losses. The gratitude is felt most strongly after the dark night of the soul. The spring is welcomed only after the long, cold season of winter. Certainly, it would be easier if the Christian story, our stories, told only of the good. But it doesn't. Ours don't. Our stories tell of lives lived in wholeness and in brokenness, in sorrow and in joy. The Easter story of Jesus begins with grieving. We know there is more to the story, but it only comes after the death, after the loss and the grieving. Although our society often tries to tell us that we must live only in the light, that is not true to our experiences. We need to give ourselves adequate time in the darkness, adequate time with our grief, adequate time with our sadness, times when we need to say, shh, the Alleluias are sleeping. After the darkness, the Easter story of Jesus offers us the hope of a resurrection. We don't all agree on what happened then, but as Unitarian Universalists, we have agreed to focus together on what happens now, and to use these sacred stories from all cultures, to inform our lives and journeys and quests for peace, love, and justice here and now. In our own stories, we have to decide for ourselves what resurrection might look like. It won't look like our loved ones coming back from the dead. That is not our story. There is a television show on now called Resurrection, and the storyline is about people coming back to life years after their own deaths. And one day they show up on their family's doorstep unchanged. When commercials for this show come on, I have to change the channel. I find it so heartbreaking because I know that that is not our story. That cannot be our story. But it doesn't mean that we do not have our own resurrection stories. Ours won't look like Jesus' resurrection or the television show, but it might look like slowly re-engaging the world after a Great Depression. It might look like sobriety. It might look like the first smile we can muster after a devastating loss. It might look like coming to terms with a new normal after a big life change. This week marks the one-year anniversary of the Boston Marathon bombings. Tomorrow, 36,000 runners will run a course that has been run for 118 years. Roseanne Sedoya is still not sure if she'll be there tomorrow. She's not quite ready for that yet. Last year, she was at the finish line cheering on a friend when the second bomb went off beside her. Sedoya was badly injured. In the midst of the chaos, a 20-year-old Northeastern student rushed over, used his belt as a makeshift tourniquet on her leg, picked her up off the sidewalk, and carried her to the first emergency responders he could find. Since all the ambulances were full, they put her in the back of a police van with another survivor and 2 Boston firefighters. One of the firefighters held her hand all the way to Mass General Hospital. On arrival at the hospital, Sedoya finally allowed herself to lose consciousness. When she woke up the next evening, she saw that her right leg had been amputated below the knee. For the next 30 days, she stayed in the Spaulding Rehabilitation Center in the Charlestown Navy Yard, slowly beginning the long road to recovery. In June, Sedoya got her new prosthetic leg. One day, Justin, her old personal trainer at her gym, called her. "Whenever you want to come back," he said, "let me know. I'm here to help you." Although he had never worked with an amputee before, he did research to figure out what she needed to help her carry the dead weight on her right side. In addition to her physical therapy sessions twice a week, she worked with Justin at the gym to strengthen her core, her upper body, and her balance. Now, when Justin pushes her and tells her 4 more, instead of just going through the motions, she becomes more determined to make each rep count. Every time Sedoya comes home, she has to climb 18 steps, 6 stairs into her building, 12 more to her apartment. It's an old building in Boston's North End with doors that are big and heavy, not an easy place for an amputee to live. When she left the hospital a month after the marathon, she had a choice. She could find another place to live, one more suitable for someone who wears a prosthetic, or she could stay. She stayed. It takes about a year for amputation wounds to heal. Sedoya is not in pain anymore, but every move she makes is a calculated one. When she walks, she still sometimes trips and stumbles every so often. The hardest part is walking long distances. Going just a block wipes her out, so she's working to build up her stamina. Her goal is to get back to running. A fellow amputee, Jolly Rosenberg, who lost his right leg to cancer as a teen 40 years ago, is currently filming a documentary about Sedoya's comeback called "Who Says Roseanne Can't Run?" Sedoya and other survivors of the Boston Marathon bombings have a mixed emotional response to the term that has swept the country over this past year and become part of our language, Boston strong. She is strong, but still, she says, she cries every day. What is sinking in, she says, is that this is for life. That is how I have to live, how I have to walk. What is sinking in is that life has changed. And the good news in the story. You remember the firefighter who held her hand on the way to the hospital? His name is Mike. And he visited her the next day in the hospital to see how she was recovering. And he kept visiting. A month later, when Sedoya was finally back home, a friend insisted that she practice getting up and down her fire escape. She called Mike to see if he could help. He came over right away. To date, they haven't practiced going down the fire escape, but they've been together ever since. Today, Sedoya navigates her new life with her partner Mike at her side. This is her resurrection story. There are many others from that day. For the Richards family, the resurrection story involves the Martin Richard Charitable Foundation. founded in memory of their son, Martin. The foundation will invest in education, athletics, and community. A team of 100 runners has raised more than $850,000 for this charity, and they will be running in honor of Martin tomorrow. It became clear to us over the last few months that we would not run from the marathon, said Martin's dad, but embrace it to help us heal, to honor my son and his message, and to pay it forward. This Easter morning, we honor that original resurrection story, and also the stories all around us of people making their way back to life and onward to new lives. We pay homage to those whose deaths have given birth to messages of love, hope, and peace. And though we may get teased for making this part of our Easter message, our reminder of the possibility of resurrection just might look like tiny green shoots poking through the earth, barren trees coming into bud. It might sound like a chorus of peepers. It might sound like a chirping bird. A miracle may have occurred thousands of years ago in Jerusalem, but the one we get to see is just as miraculous. The miracle of earth coming back to life in the spring of the year. And if we're lucky, in our lifetimes, we will also witness and experience the miracle of our own resurrection, being called back to life again and again and again. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be.